He ended lives for a living, but no one would shake his hand. In the Middle Ages, justice had a face. A hooded one. He wore it not to hide, but because no one wanted to see the eyes of the man who made the axe fall. He was called when the law needed a final word, but when he walked through the village, doors closed. Mothers turned their children away. He was a paradox, a necessary evil, feared like a monster, but hired by kings. A man of ritual, but denied salvation. His hands delivered justice, yet they were never clean. History remembers the kings who gave the orders, the mobs who cheered, the criminals who died, but few remember him. In this episode, we step into the silent world of the medieval executioner. We'll follow the bloodline of a profession passed down like a curse, uncover the rituals and regrets behind every swing, and ask why society feared the man it needed most, even as it left him utterly, tragically alone. When justice wore a hood. In the Middle Ages, justice wasn't hidden behind courtroom doors. It bled into the street, it echoed through the square, and it wore a hood. Execution was not merely punishment, it was theater, sacred ritual, public warning, and divine choreography between crime and consequence. The crowd didn't just come to see a man die. They came to see the world made right. To the medieval mind, crime wasn't just against man, it was against God. Blood had to balance blood. And the executioner? He wasn't just a punisher. He was an instrument. The sword in God's unseen hand. From England's Tyburn gallows to the scaffolds of Paris, death became spectacle. And in that sacred theater, the man behind the blade was both high priest and untouchable. Before laws were inked, justice was personal. A father killed, a son took revenge. The cycle was endless and bloody. But slowly, the state stepped in. Kings and lords declared, "Only we decide who dies." And how. Justice was no longer the hand of the aggrieved. It became a crown-sanctioned right. And to wield its power, a new figure emerged. The professional executioner was born, not chosen, but often condemned to the role by birth, accident, or punishment. Germany, France, England. Each carved out a grim cast of men licensed to kill on behalf of the law. Some were criminals spared the gallows in exchange for service. Others inherited the axe from fathers before them. They were paid in coin, and cursed in whispers. One of the most infamous and deeply human executioners in history was Franz Schmidt, Nuremberg's swordmaster of justice. Between 1573 and 1617, he executed 394 people and documented nearly every one. His diary reveals a man who prayed for his victims, who begged for absolution, who performed each killing with the solemnity of Mass. To Schmidt, this was not savagery, it was duty. And yet, he would never be invited to dine with those he served, feared, necessary, forgotten. When the cheering stopped and the blood dried, the executioner did not vanish. He went home, alone. And tomorrow, he would kill again. But for those who wore the hood, death didn't end at the block. It followed them, marked their names, haunted their children, and chained their futures. This is Hans. His name was never recorded in history book, but his life echoes hundreds like him across medieval Europe. His father was an executioner. So was his grandfather. So Hans was born with a blade in his hand, and a curse in his blood. To be born to an executioner was to be born untouchable. In parts of Germany, executioner families were forbidden to own land, to join guilds, even to enter churches. You couldn't eat with them. You couldn't marry them. In some towns, you couldn't even look them in the eye. It didn't matter if Hans was kind, or devout, or just a boy. His family spilled blood. And that blood never washed off. Some executioners, like Hans, never wanted the job. They tried to break free, learn a trade, join the military, flee to another town. But the brand followed them. Sometimes it was poverty. Sometimes it was a criminal sentence commuted in exchange for service. And sometimes it was simply the only way a man like Hans could feed his family. So he took the axe. Not with pride, but with despair. By law, Hans could not marry into another profession. By custom, he could not even live within the village walls. Some executioners were forced to wear identifying symbols. Others were confined to ghettos on the edge of town. To the public, he was monstrous, yet he wept after each sentence. His home was silent. His children grew in fear or shame. His wife left him, carrying his blood, but not his name. Precision, ceremony, and blood. He was hated, feared, cursed. But make no mistake, he was also highly trained. The executioner was more than a butcher. He was a precision instrument of the state. And death was his profession. Each method had its tool. Each tool had its ritual. The sword of justice, a massive blade designed for clean beheadings. The gallows, designed not to snap the neck, but to suffocate. The breaking wheel, a slow, bone-shattering death meant to display pain as a warning. Quartering, boiling, burning, each sentence matched the crime, and the executioner had to deliver it cleanly. Precision wasn't mercy. It was expectation. Botching a job didn't just disgrace the killer, it could unleash a riot. Execution wasn't only about death. It was about order. It was a spectacle, a ritual, a message written in blood. Before the blade fell, the condemned was offered last rites, a final confession, a prayer, sometimes even a coin for the afterlife. The crowd wanted drama. The magistrates demanded dignity. And the executioner was the man at the center of both. He stood still, silent, waiting for the signal. And when it came, he did not hesitate. But even the most skilled hands could tremble. In 1587, Mary, Queen of Scots, knelt before the axe. The first strike missed her neck entirely. The second barely did better. It took 3 attempts. When her head was raised to the crowd, her wig slipped off, and her head fell again. The crowd screamed. The priest fainted, and the executioner vomited. It was a botched death, and it nearly started an uprising. In the profession of death, error was the ultimate shame. Execution wasn't chaos. It wasn't rage. It was orchestration, a choreographed ritual of controlled violence. And for the executioner, it was a job he never stopped performing. Not even in his dreams. The crowd had cheered his precision just hours earlier. But now, they avoided his shadow. He kept their laws, delivered their justice, and for that, they cursed his name. In the eyes of society, Hans didn't just kill people. He killed something sacred. And for that, he was made invisible. In medieval Europe, the laws didn't end with the blade. Executioners were banned from touching sacred ground. They couldn't enter churches or graveyards. They were unwelcome at wells, lest their hands taint the water. They could not marry freely, and many towns forbade eye contact with them entirely. Even their houses were separate, on the far edge of town, beyond the walls, beyond the warmth. He lived in a house built by law, but surrounded by silence. But the law didn't pay enough to feed a family. Many executioners became knackers, removers of dead animals, hauling bloated carcasses to pits. Others became torturers, or surgeons of last resort. Erased yet remembered. The crowd still came, but the man with the sword was gone. By the late 1700s, Europe had changed. Justice no longer needed a face. The blade no longer needed a hand. The guillotine, swift, clinical, equalizing, became the new symbol of death. A revolution not only of politics, but of killing. In France, one name loomed large: Charles-Henri Sanson, the royal executioner turned servant of the revolution. He killed kings and commoners, revolutionaries and traitors, with the same solemn gaze. But even he, descended from 6 generations of executioners, felt the weight. He kept diaries, just like Hans might have, and in them, he wrote of trembling hands, sleepless nights, and the unbearable silence after each scream. As the 19th century marched into modernity, the executioner's house fell into ruin. Their children changed names. Their records faded. their bloodlines scattered into the crowd. With no more gallows and no more swords, there was no more need for men like Hans. They had served the law for centuries, only to be forgotten by it. Today, we remember executioners as monsters, grim, hooded figures with soulless stares. But the truth was stranger and sadder. They were civil servants, healers, fathers, and ghosts, men born into roles they did not ask for, doing a job no one wanted, yet everyone demanded. The hood, the axe, the myth make it easier for us to forget the man.